Welcome to Unholy Inquiry, where each tale leads you deeper into a labyrinth of mystery waiting to be uncovered. This time, join us as we delve into Hercule Poirot and the mystery of the Vanishing, a fan-crafted story that pays homage to the genius and sophistication of Agatha Christie's iconic detective, Hercule Poirot. We are thrilled to have you with us on this captivating journey. Share your thoughts, let us know where you're tuning in from, and if you spot any details we missed, your feedback is invaluable. Together, let's continue to shape even more thrilling enigmas. Chapter 1. The Ball That Wasn't. A fierce rain lashed against the elegant windows of Windermere Manor, each droplet racing down the panes as if eager to escape the dreary spectacle that unfolded beyond. The usually resplendent grounds, decorated with lavender and wild hydrangeas, stood a dismal sight. The tempest had transformed the once vibrant path into a muddy track that whispers secrets. It was on this stormy night that the rustling whispers of Larkspur Village became a cacophony of confusion. The annual ball, an event deemed essential in the social calendar, had been cancelled, throwing the community into turmoil. As lords and ladies emerged from carriages, umbrellas in hand, a sudden shimmer of lights in the grand dining room caught the eye of one notably unimpressed figure. Hercule Poirot strolled, impeccably tailored, through the main hall of the manor. His polished shoes echoed against the marble floor. He had arrived with great anticipation, eager to enjoy a lively evening among friends, yet found himself detained by an air of dread. Despite the swirling chaos of disappointed guests, Poirot observed a distinct unease gripping the room, like the gusts rattling the windows. It was then he learned of Lady Isolde's disappearance from her own home. Just hours before the evening's festivities, the heiress had been seen last in the library, her favourite nook that overlooked the fog-laden landscape. She had penned a letter, half-finished, and simply vanished. The villagers, a mix of curious gossip and genuine concern, surrounded the dimly lit hall where whispers tangled with the rustle of evening dresses. Poirot approached the small cluster of increasingly anxious guests. Among them stood Lady Cressida, a well-known socialite, whose tightly wound curls seemed at once both polished and unkempt. She paced, her voice a sharp whisper beneath the howling winds. "Do you not find it odd? The ball of the year, and our host absent as a ghost?" Poirot, his brows knitting together, conceded the strangeness. "Indeed, madame, it is to be questioned. What has brought forth this sudden, how do you say, inexplicable vanishing act?" Lady Cressida leaned closer as if sharing a state secret, and the intrigue in her sparkling eyes gave Poirot pause. "She left a letter," she murmured, glancing furtively around. "They say it is cryptic, not meant for any of us, but for someone special. I heard her speaking of an arrangement to meet someone tonight." "Someone?" Poirot echoed, his interest piqued. "Ah, but do you know, perhaps, who this someone might be?" Cressida shook her head, anxiety etched across her features. "Only that she was distraught last night. My husband, you see, mentioned catching snippets of her conversation. Frustrations about family expectations, secrets unshared. Perhaps a lover." Poirot stood, a momentary stillness cloaking his poised frame. A tempest of conjecture stirred within him. Expectations often led to rebellion. Secrets could cloud judgment. Lady Isolde had always seemed the picture of poise, the angel in her father's emerald reflections. Yet even angels have their tales of shadows. "Let us seek the letter," he suggested, his voice warm but urgent. it may tell us more than mere gossip. As they moved toward the library, Poirot's keen eyes captured every detail. Phrases slipped from lips all around him as patrons, dressed in silks and satins, murmured doubts about the heiress's character, her devotion to family, and the strange coincidences that had foreshadowed her sudden ghosting. Cressida, clutching a pearl-embroidered shawl, led him through the lavishly furnished corridors, the scent of mahogany, dust, and crumbling paper chasing them. Upon entering the library, they found it dimly lit, books standing stoic like sentinels. Poirot moved with purpose, allowing his gaze to sweep across the small room. Dark leather, chairs, the fireplace long cold, and the table hosted an open letter, partially obscured. The ink glistened faintly. With a gloved hand, he picked it up, reading Lady Isolde's looping script. "Dear heart, when you receive this, I shall be—" A flicker of determination flared in his eyes. How essential was this correspondence? Words seeped with urgency revealed, "I must choose my own path. The weight of jewels and titles suffocates me." The emotional weight of the letter anchored straight into the marrow of Poirot's intellect. It was the voice of a woman bordered by responsibility, yearning for liberation, yet had it driven her to vanish rather than confront. As Cressida leaned closer with rapt attention, Poirot lifted the letter, revealing one final, crucial detail. On the spot where the ink flowed free and true, traces were smeared, making it clear that Lady Isolde had dashed the letter in haste. This was written before she vanished, he deduced aloud, yet she meant for it to reach someone else, no? Imagine the scandal if her family knew, Lady Cressida gasped, her eyes widened in realization. Poirot regarded her thoughtfully, pulling in the threads of suspicion, tremulously hovering above them like a curtain of an impending storm. "No, what you must consider, madame, is the motivation of those around her. An heiress disappearing? But why? And was it her own choice, or perhaps assisted?" The tension thickened. They were beginning to draw nearer to the heart of a dark puzzle, the outlines of human passions stark against the backdrop of turmoil and deceit. Poirot could sense the steps closing in, a web of jealousy, ambition, and unresolved conflict entangling them all. "Lady Cressida, gather the guests. I wish to gather us all in the drawing-room," said Poirot, intent on weaving the threads he now possessed. As they strode from the library, another gust of wind battered against the manor, vibrating through its skeleton. Outside, the villagers murmured under their breath. Excitement and apprehension hung heavy in the air, enveloped in palpable suspense. As Poirot stepped into the light, shadows of uncertainty danced across the walls, and he understood one thing. The night of the ball that wasn't had only just begun, and in its midst lay not only the key to Lady Isolde's disappearance, but a deeper mystery yet to unfold, one that offered no graces or easy resolutions. And so it was, the grand investigation had commenced, leaving each flickering candle in Windermere to illuminate the dim truths and dark deceptions hidden within the hearts of an unsuspecting society. Poirot would unravel it. He would, indeed. Chapter 2. A Voice from the Shadows. An ominous wind howled through the eaves of Windermere Manor, rattling the shutters and extinguishing the flames of half-burnt candles on the mahogany table. The distant rumble of thunder quivered within the dimly lit drawing-room, echoing the palpable anxiety of its occupants. Hercule Poirot stood at the window, observing, through rivulets of rain, the way the heavens unleashed their fury onto the grounds, rendering the elegant gardens unrecognizable beneath the deluge. His concentration was interrupted by the sudden clamor of pans crashing to the floor from the kitchen, quickly followed by hurried footsteps. "Monsieur Poirot!" Lady Cressida's voice, always pitched with an undertone of urgency, sliced through the atmospheric tension. "A telegram has arrived for you." He turned, a frown of bemusement creasing his forehead. Telegrams traditionally carried news of import, but the haste in her delivery was telling. Within moments, the message was thrust into his hand. Unfolding the paper, Poirot's eyes skimmed over the neat scrawl. "Urgent. Please come to Larkspur. Lady Isolde's fate depends on your immediate attention. G.T." The resonance of those initials pulsed through him. G.T. Gerald Tremaine, a local solicitor, an acquaintance of Lady Isolde, and a man whose reputation for discretion was only outshone by his loyalty to the village. Poirot's instincts flared, a concoction of curiosity and dread brewing within. Pushing the telegram into his coat pocket, he turned to the others. "I must leave, ladies, for there lies a mystery that requires my immediate attention." But as he strode for the door, another colossal clash of thunder shook the manor, plunging the room into darkness. There was an instant gasp from the women, punctuating the silence that had fallen like a heavy cloak. Poirot paused, his well-honed senses on high alert. The darkness enveloped them, a thick curtain that muted their surroundings. "What is happening?" Lady Cressida murmured, her voice trembling. "A blackout, it seems, perhaps due to the storm," Poirot replied, his voice calm yet firm. He moved in the direction where the candlelight had flickered out. "We must not lose our sense of sight, or rather, our sense of purpose. Remain close, ladies." POV shifted as echoes of uncertainty reverberated around them, the unease palpable in the absence of light. The fluttering of skirts and frantic whispers multiplied as guests stumbled in. Confusion. Poirot navigated through the dark, deftly guiding Cressida and others toward the safety of the drawing room again, where the fireplace still held a dying ember. "Let me find some matches," said one of the guests, the young Viscountess, though her voice quaked every bit as much as the cold draught that filled the room. Poirot felt the urgency of the moment, the tension crackling around them like the distant lightning that lit up the blackened sky. It struck him, the absence of illumination was not just a result of the storm, but a form of confinement. Each individual in the room, cloaked in shadow, was simultaneously bound by uncertainty and the secrets each one carried. As the Viscountess struck a match, holding it to the kindling, the faint flickering glow revealed the strained faces around Poirot, each masked with their fears, yet holding tightly to a facade. A deep silence settled among them as they awaited the flame to ignite life. "Where is Lady Isolde?" Question, voiced low and trembling by Lady Cressida, crashed through the relative tranquility of the flickering lights. A chill hung in the air as they collectively held their breaths, enwrapped in the mystery that echoed in this very drawing room. Poirot felt the weight of the inquiry. It was a question teeming with veiled accusations. "Do you believe she is in danger, madame?" he queried, consciously unveiling the tangled layers of human emotions. "Danger?" repeated Cressida, her voice rising. "Certainly. A young woman vanishing on the eve of her own ball. Is it not a dangerous game of hide-and-seek? And what if it were not hide-and-seek, but rather a calculated act?" Poirot suggested, his brow furrowed as he scrutinized her every word. "Have we considered that perhaps she fled from something, or someone, far more dangerous?" Suddenly, the Viscountess clutched her arm, letting the match fall extinguished onto the carpet. "You speak lightly of danger, Poirot. What if her disappearance is tied to greater treachery? What do you know?" Poirot straightened, undeterred. "What I know is that within the darkness we must search for clarity. We must turn our own shadows into light." He took a breath to steady himself as the guests began to murmur anxiously about their own knowledge of Lady Isolde. "We require communication. The storm prevents us from reaching anyone outside, but—" He trailed off, the beginnings of a thought stirring in his mind. Futile as it may sound, if he could somehow navigate the manor's darkened halls by memory, perhaps he could uncover something hidden, something that remained unexamined in their collective panic. "I need to search the areas she frequented," he decided firmly. "The library will yield clues. Her intentions may lie between the pages of her correspondence, her thoughts cloaked in ink. I believe it essential." Yet just as he made to move again, a scream shattered the mounting tension, echoing wildly against the walls, sharp, piercing, and filled with horror. Poirot swiveled, instinctively reaching for Cressida. The realization that the Viscountess had stumbled into a corner, seemingly paralyzed with fright, came at once. "What is it?" Poirot demanded, his heart racing as the darkness clung around them with daunting intent. It was just here," she gasped, pointing into the shadows. "A figure. I saw a figure." Before Poirot could unravel her words, the powerful crack of thunder lit the room once more, illuminating a figure, standing at the far end, cloaked and hooded, a spectre against the dim glow. A sudden wave of silence crested before it collapsed back into chaos. Questions filled the air, but their meanings grew lost in panic. Poirot's eyes narrowed, the details crystallizing as he studied the silhouette. Slowly, his heart spiked with adrenaline. Somewhere in this night of confusion, actions spun by distrust were at play, and shadows danced around truths that begged to be unveiled. Commanding the chaos, Poirot called out, "Who are you? Reveal yourself." The figure hesitated before a glimmer of silver caught the light, and in an instant the figure vanished into the fog of surrounding darkness. But a chill lingered in Poirot's thoughts. Returning to his instincts, he suspected the sudden blackout was no mere misfortune. The carefully choreographed tapestry of misdirection and fear began to unfurl, leading him back to one common thread: Lady Isolde. As the storm outside raged on and tension electrified the atmosphere, Poirot knew he was on the precipice of revelation. The answers lay scattered in shadows, waiting for the light of truth to finally shine through. He could feel it, a path awaiting his steps, one that would not stay obscured for long. Little did they know, the storm held more than mere weather. It was a harbinger of revelations yet to come. And in the depths of Windermere Manor, the true nature of deception was about to rise once more from the shadows, promising to transform the lives entwined within its walls forever. Chapter 3. The Room with No Exit. Just as the flicker of the withered candle cast a timid glow, the silence was shattered by a sharp crack that echoed through the manor, followed instantly by the unmistakable report of a gunshot. A collective gasp preceded a suffocating stillness, as if the embroidered walls of Windermere Manor had swallowed the air from the room. Poirot felt the familiar adrenaline quicken his heartbeat. The storm outside raged on, but in this moment, chaos had erupted. Closer to home, "Lord Balthazar!" Lady Cressida's voice rang out, tinged with disbelief. Her eyes bulged as she dashed toward the library's heavy oak door, her elegant gown whispering a frantic cascade of sound. Poirot followed promptly, an instinct driving him forward, like the thunder, crackling viciously against the night sky. The candle's flame shook, flickering ominously as they entered the library, a room that moments before had held nothing but neglected tomes and whispered secrets. The sight that met them sent a pallor across everyone's face. Lord Balthazar lay sprawled across the plush Persian carpet, the deep hues of red and gold stark against the faded brown of his tweed suit. The gun lay at an unnatural angle, pointing away from his still form, and the shroud of ink-dark shadows held an unnatural stillness in this moment of discovery. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot exclaimed, instinctively kneeling beside the body. "What a ghastly twist in this tale!" "Who shot him?" the Viscountess whimpered, nervously clutching her pearls. "And how, in heaven's name, did the assailant escape?" "No sign of forced entry," observed Poirot, his voice quiet but firm. He placed his fingers delicately upon the wrist of the deceased, feeling for a pulse that he knew would not be there. The rush of fear and the overwhelming sense of grief intermingled in the room. "All of you were present during the blackout, were you not?" "But that means one of us is a murderer," Lady Cressida gasped, her hand rising to her mouth. "What if they strike again?" "Calm yourselves," Poirot implored, rising and surveying the room with narrowed eyes. "Panic will not solve our predicament. We are, after all, amidst a locked chamber with no exit visible." The words sent tremors through the remaining guests. Each of them, caught in shadows, wore expressions revealing the weight they bore, the weight of secrets, hidden truths obscured in their individual narratives. "Excusez-moi, mesdames, I must examine the surroundings," Poirot pronounced, moving with purpose. The walls were lined with oak bookshelves, a rich library of forgotten lore untouched for years. His eyes flitted over the spines until they landed upon a novel, The Gilded Cages, a book Lady Isolde had recently recommended to Lord Balthazar, notorious for its intricate twists of betrayal. "Come here," he commanded, beckoning a pair of incredulous eyes from behind the Viscountess, whose demeanor seemed increasingly agitated. "Let us examine this further." As Poirot pulled the book from the shelf, a small piece of paper fluttered to the floor, unnoticed at first, but quickly snatched up by a trembling hand. "What's this?" Cressida mumbled, her countenance paling further as she unfolded the fragile note. "Not just any note, my dear," Poirot mused, peering over her shoulder. "May we see your hand, my lady?" "Why, whatever do you mean?" Cressida responded, flustered. I haven't the slightest idea." "Allow me," he insisted, gently, while grasping her wrist to examine her handwriting. The letter was hastily scrawled, barely legible. "You see, it bears a resemblance," he murmured. "May I compare it with that of our late friends?" As he gestured toward the writing desk, laden with Lord Balthazar's correspondence, he felt the weighty gaze of the guests observing the proceedings, anticipation thickening the air. "Bear with me while I decipher this," Poirot urged, rifling through a collection of letters neatly stacked, near Lady Isolde's recent correspondence, noting the elegance of her script. The two handwritings presented a remarkable contrast, Isolde's flowing, almost poetic style against the sharper, jagged letters of Cressida. Yet upon close examination, certain letters bore similarities. A glint of something brewed in Poirot's mind as his thoughts raced, pulling the threads together. "Cressida, you had opened a door to Balthazar, a door that may have led to his demise," he declared softly, yet with the sharp clarity that shook both her and the other guests. "Why should I wish him ill? The man was insufferable, but I would not kill him." Ah, but in matters of jealousy, sometimes the lines blur, Poirot mused, as he pondered what lay within the intricacies of her psyche. The feud over Lady Isolde, a motive tangled among the tangled hearts, blooming in humid spring. Before he could react further, the shrill sound of a woman's voice pierced the fog of tension, prompting Poirot to snap his gaze toward the corridor. There, behind the door, a figure appeared, none other than Gerald Tremaine, soaked to the bone, panic-stricken, his wind-tousled hair accentuating the urgency etched upon his face. "Poirot, I have urgent news from Larkspur," he gasped, stepping into the library, only to falter as his eyes settled upon the grisly sight before him. "Is it true, Lord Balthazar?" Poirot raised a brow, intrigued. "What news have you that could possibly overshadow this dreadful calamity? Is it concerning Lady Isolde?" Tremaine hesitated, gulping as he glanced nervously around the room, his gaze sweeping over the paralyzed faces. "The telegram warned of danger, but I did not expect it would be so immediate." "Spare us the vagueness," Poirot pressed. "Your news, what is it?" "This telegram revealed that Isolde has an affair. She was to meet someone, not just anyone, but a figure whose identity could destroy the very heart of this family." Tremaine's words broke through the suffocating tension, leaving behind chilled whispers in their wake. Already, Poirot felt the ground shift beneath the narrative laid before him. He turned sharply toward Cressida, whose eyes bore a flicker of realization that seemed momentarily to betray her cool demeanor. "Dare I surmise, this tangled web of affair may lead us back to the room with no exit. Locks that restrain bodies can yield with the right key, a more potent key than any made of brass," he murmured, steeling himself for the ultimate reveal. The web of deceit was deepening with darker shades of intent, and Poirot could almost taste the distance of truth only waiting to emerge. The uncertainty lingered. Was the figure in the shadows the author of betrayal, or had they scattered like phantoms throughout the night? As the thunder rumbled overhead and wind howled through the cracks, Poirot understood one undeniable truth. In this room, where a life had been extinguished, the final pieces were on the verge of aligning. With the storm raging outside, a different storm of ambition and dread brewed within the hearts of those gathered, each of them acting in their own best interests, spinning tales with lives hanging in the balance. What waited at the end of this dark labyrinth remained cloaked in shadows, but Poirot's mind blazed with resolution, shaping the path to its inevitable unveiling. As the chilling echoes reverberated around them, Poirot was certain that the door of the library, locked but for the key of truth, would yield a revelation that would set all stories on their rightful course. He stood at the precipice of revelation, one that would surely transform this somber gathering and the tangled threads that bound them all forever. Chapter 4. The Will That Was Never Signed. The rain fell in heavy sheets, obscuring the countryside beyond Windermere Manor in a shroud of grey. The rhythmic pitter-patter against the windows drowned out the whispers that trailed through the village like gossiping spectres, echoing the unease that lay thick in the air after Lord Balthazar's shocking death. Inside the manor, tensions simmered as the remaining guests retreated to their respective corners, eyes darting in apprehension. Poirot, however, stood resolute, arms folded, as he contemplated the spiraling chaos around him. He had summoned the villagers for their insight, those who lived near enough to unravel the threads of familiarity tied to the estate. Not a soul could remain uninformed of the tragedy that had befallen them, and whispers began to weave tales even before the news travelled far beyond the manor's grounds. "Rumours, they spread like wildfire," spoke Mrs. Hargrove, the town florist, her apron dampened as she stood in the drawing-room, nervously arranging a wilted bouquet. "They say that Lord Balthazar's death was not an accident, but a punishment for some hidden sin. And they speak of a will, one that was never signed." The words hung like thick fog in the air. Poirot, intrigued, leaned closer. "A will that could change everything, you say? What more can you tell me, madame?" A flicker of fear danced across Mrs. Hargrove's features. "It is said he had intentions to alter his estate before his demise, leaving behind a fortune to someone unexpected. But the document, meant to benefit Lady Isolde, was never executed. Perhaps some saw an opportunity," she finished, her voice faint, laden with implication. Poirot's mind raced, each word striking a chord. Various motives began to surface, possibilities weaving together within his thoughts. He sensed desire and desperation intermingling in the very fabric of the atmosphere, where ambition, buried beneath a charming surface, altered the intentions of those within reach of power or wealth. As the villagers continued to murmur, Poirot caught sight of Lady Isolde, pale and drawn, still mourning the loss of Balthazar, but now shattered by the additional weight of this revelation. Steeling himself, he approached her, vulnerability shifting from widow to captive. "Lady Isolde, might I impose upon your grief?" Poirot inquired gently, his usual elegance softened by sincerity. "What do you know of this will? Was it truly your intent to claim what was meant for you, or could it have been a source of discord?" Isolde's gaze flitted from Poirot to the distant shadows where her fellow guests stood, tension draping over them like a damp shroud. "I knew nothing of such movements. He told me only of his affection, and the intent to provide for me, should anything—" Her voice quivered slightly. "But in the wake of violence, who knows how things may change?" "Who indeed?" he murmured, his gaze returning toward the window, watching the rain-lashed landscape with keen scrutiny, as if the weather could reveal hidden truths. Thus far, the elements were brutal, and so too were the circumstances surrounding their gathering. Hidden within this veil of shadows, he could smell treachery. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed across the hall. Poirot turned swiftly, just in time to see Gerald Tremaine rush into the drawing-room, his eyes wide with alarm, a fresh dampness tracing over him from the downpour. "Poirot," he gasped, barely containing his urgency. "Lady Isolde's maid, Margaret, has gone missing. Her room is empty, the door left ajar." A chill slid down Poirot's spine, instinctively connecting the dots. "Missing? Tell me, was she involved in the events leading to Balthazar's death?" "I don't know," Tremaine replied, breathless, "but she was privy to many conversations in the manor. What if she knows more about the will, about secrets that could turn this tragedy into a scandal? If she encounters the wrong person—" As he spoke, Poirot perceived the mounting panic in the gathering crowd. Competing motives lay hidden in the depths of each guest's heart, desires arching like stakes in a game of chance. "Gather the others," he instructed Tremaine with a steely determination. "We may need every insight available to unearth her whereabouts." As Tremaine rushed from the room, Poirot closed his eyes, tuning in to the cacophony of uncertainty surrounding him. The soft sobs mingling with agitated whispers, cloaked fears skirting the edges of discovery. Cressida re-entered the drawing-room moments later, cheeks flushed, her voice shaking with indignation. "This affair, Poirot, If there has been a will that holds a fortune for Isolde, one that might turn her into a target, doesn't that implicate all of us? She turned desperate eyes towards him, vulnerability stripped away as resentment took its place. I simply won't allow the wicked to poison this place further. Cressida, all I seek is clarity, Poirot replied calmly, affording her a moment of grace. Do not mistake the chance for clarity as an accusation. Your own emotions may very well play a role as we sift through this bitter storm. As she stepped back, a moment of tension broke and highlighted how deeply the dynamics had shifted. Each guest, hidden within corners of their own design, now seemed to breed ill intentions unearthed by a will that might never have existed. Feuds and hidden truths became entangled in the shadows now, cast over the sun's light. Suddenly, Poirot's eyes brightened with a thought. Perhaps we must seek Margaret's whereabouts in personal realms, for could there be a way to trace her actions or uncover documents she was in pursuit of? Just then, a villager stumbled into the room. Rain-soaked and breathless, he clutched a faded letter. This was found in the street, sir. It looks important. The ink, it resembles Lord Balthazar's, but has been unsigned. The room stiffened, a tense silence falling, like a curtain. Poirot's heart quickened, and he stepped closer, his pulse racing with intrigue. If this letter, whatever secret it held, was indeed connected to the will, his instinct told him that it could lead them one step closer to the truth, or perhaps toward their own destruction. Every signature tells a story, my friend, Poirot mused, reaching for the letter, feeling the gravity of the moment settle over him. And in this game of life and death, it may very well be that some stories are the ones most desperately wish to remain untold. As he opened the letter to reveal its unknown fate, darkness loomed in the air, its secrets wanting to spill forth. And as he scanned the words, with every syllable carried upon the storm brewing outside, Poirot felt it, a storm of betrayal, gathering strength, waiting to be unleashed. In that moment, he understood he was closer to the heart of the mystery than ever before, even as new dangers loomed at every turn. As the clock struck midnight, the heavy rain drummed ceaselessly against the gabled roof of Windermere Manor, sending echoes of unease through the sprawling halls. Hercule Poirot stood poised at the threshold of the library, the tense air thick with anticipation after Lady Isolde's unsanctioned conversations had unsettled the impenetrable facade of the household. Earlier that evening, the news of the missing maid, Margaret, had pressed on his shoulders like the weight of an unseen spectre. Among them, every inhabitant now marred by covert motives that ran deeper than the very foundations of the estate. It was a stormy night outside, but it was the storm brewing within the deferential veneer of this gathering that posed the true danger. Eager to pry loose the secrets swirling in the ether, Poirot skulked through dimly lit corridors, the exaggerated creaks of the old manor highlighting his movements. He stopped at the thing that caught his eye, the ornate mirror with gilt edges reflecting unsettling patterns of darkness, as if hiding fragments of truth. With a mind sharp and observant, he wondered if the lock of the external doors was as secure as the fragile trust among the engaged witnesses to this drama. He stepped into the expansive foyer, where the flickering candlelight cast elongated shadows that danced upon the walls. Poirot's intuition beckoned him toward a door shrouded in mystery, one that led outside to the sprawling gardens. It had been neglected amid the flood of emotions swirling within, yet something deeper called him into the night. Under the cloak of darkness, his feet glided silently across the damp stone path. He took a moment to survey the landscape, hearing the distant rumble of thunder fill the chasm of midnight. It struck him suddenly, as if struck by lightning, that there might exist a hidden path known only to a few. With each deliberate step, Poirot felt the latent secrets buried within the estate yearning for exposure. The path twisted with dampness and uncertainty. As he rounded a cluster of overgrown hedges, he discovered a narrow trail that led toward an area secluded from the main grounds. The trees loomed tall and foreboding against the night sky, branches clutching toward one another as if transmitting unspoken messages. Poirot's pulse quickened when he spotted a sliver of movement, a figure flitting just beyond his line of sight. "Parbleu," he whispered, quickly concealing himself behind a dense thicket, the cool breeze biting at his skin. His heart raced with the thrill of capturing the unknown. The shadows drew closer, revealing the figure's silhouette, framed beneath the silvery light filtering through the clouds. Margaret, he mused softly to himself, recognition ringing through him like a bell's toll. He had an inkling of her elusive importance. This maid, caught in crossfires of dubious dealings that had buried themselves beneath the floral arrangement of lives that surrounded Lord Balthazar. But Margaret was not alone. In filthy white socks that barely reached the floor, her attire betrayed her in urgent disarray. Poirot watched from a distance as she jerked in the shadows, her movements frantic. She hesitated, then knelt to the ground, her slender hands rummaging through the underbrush with a fervor that belied her glum countenance. What could she be so desperately seeking? The air filled with tension as Poirot's breath froze in his throat. Suddenly, a sound broke through the tempest. A low, guttural whisper tore through the night. "Tonight, meet me here. We cannot linger." The voice, unmistakably male, sent a shiver down Poirot's spine. Out of concealment, he could see the man, his sharp features illuminated by the occasional lightning flash. "Whom do I behold?" Poirot bade quietly to himself, analyzing the silhouette. The man's stature suggested confidence and perhaps arrogance, traits that might attribute favor in uncertain quarters. The figure's identity flickered with realization. Tremaine, his nervousness belying ulterior motives beneath a polished exterior. Poirot considered the implications of unfolding events, the nature of secrets harbored and trust shattered. He could produce a thread tracing back to many of the various knots that encircled his current prey. Yet for now, they eluded him. They were a dance of deception he had yet to master fully. The soft rustling of cloth caught his attention, and Poirot turned his focus back toward Margaret, who'd unearthed something. In her hands lay an unusual garment, partially hidden in the dirt, a cloak of deep green velvet, yet marred by mud. A chill washed over him, prickling the back of his neck. The fabric seemed rich enough to hint at someone of importance, perhaps denoting a clandestine meeting. His eyebrows shot up as she straightened, her eyes wide, not from shock, but from the realization that she ventured too far into an unwelcome landscape. The wind carried whispers, ending in abrupt silence, with both figures huddled in their exchange like pearls in a half-open shell, holding precariously all they held dear. Just as hands reached for her collar, it happened. A sudden crash echoed through the night. An unintelligible yelp broke the thin veil of darkness, the tumultuous sound signaling the start of more than just clamoring voices. Poirot could stay still no longer. He stepped into the clearing, every intention focused on the unfolding shadows. But as he did, The atmosphere shifted. The sight of Tremaine's unmasked panic and Margaret's confusion solidified doubts in their intersections. Parting the cloak from the muddied garment, he recognized another clue that would need to be visited. On the fabric, a singular thread, unraveled, and oh la la, there lay a torn photograph caught in the fibers, a scene that begged to be pieced back together. What lies within this mystery? Poirot thought as he moved closer, the remaining threads of each suspect entwined in a web, drawing tighter. Still. The fabric of trust was frayed. Betrayal lay at their doorstep, and what they had concealed was finally bubbling to the surface. Clutching the photograph, he interrupted their gathering gloom beneath the stormy sky. "The night is young, mes amis," he declared, his mind igniting with fervor as he looked between the two. "And the truth of your alliance is yet to be uncovered." His declaration resonated within the silence, an echo heralding the storm ahead, leaving the ominous shadows of a betrayal hanging thick in the night air. As they stared at him, their expressions morphed from shock to recognition. He sensed that they now stood at a precipice, one that would determine the balance of loyalty and treachery against the sinister undercurrents daunting them all. The real heart of the mystery was about to unravel, and he needed to ready himself. Chapter 6. Shadows of Deception. The storm raged on outside Windermere Manor, reverberating within the very bones of the ancient structure. The howling wind, heavy rain, and stifling tension among the guests mingled into a symphony of dread as Hercule Poirot moved through the grand hallway. Each echoing creak of the floorboards beneath him seemed to punctuate the sense of uncertainty that enshrouded the gathering. He had just made a significant discovery at the edge of the gardens. Now it was time to confront the darkness that loomed within the manor's walls. He found himself in the drawing room, the flickering candlelight reflecting off the polished mahogany and illuminating anxious faces. All the guests were assembled. Cressida, pale as a maiden's veil. Lady Isolde, clutching her handbag as if it contained her very soul. And Tremaine, visibly sweating despite the chilly ambience. In the corner, the village villager who had brought the letter just moments earlier was now silent, an observer draped in shadows. "Ah, mes amis," Poirot began, his voice slicing through the thick tension. "We stand upon the precipice of revelation, do we not?" He gestured with his hands, the frame of his elegant suit cutting an imposing figure against the gloom. "What do you mean, Poirot?" Lady Isolde's unsteady tone was a soft tremor against the heavier murmurs of mistrust creeping among them. "I have reason to believe," he continued, "that the disappearance of Margaret is directly linked to the secrets each of us holds. What was she hiding? What did she see?" With flashes of lightning illuminating the room, Poirot watched as their eyes darted about uneasily. Like moths to a flame, the threat of exposed secrets flickered in the discussion. "We are all actors in a play where the script is written over centuries of strife and jealousy," he observed, and many heads nodded in ever-worsening apprehension. Cressida stepped forward. "I recall hearing something, Margaret whispering about the will just before she went missing." A heavy heartbeat filled the space as she elaborated. "It was late one night, and I thought it to be mere gossip. But now—" Poirot nodded, his mind racing. "Indeed, my dear Cressida, the link is becoming clearer, like the surface of the rain-soaked window pane. If Margaret knew something vital, it could very well result in her being eliminated from our narrative." "Must we really consider such gruesome things here?" Tremaine interjected, though his tone bordered more on frightened then indignant. The sheen of his forehead glistened in the dim light. His facade of courtly charm flickered. As they deliberated, Poirot's gaze fell upon the villager, still silent. "And what of you, my friend?" Poirot addressed him. "You are a witness to all this, are you not?" "Yes, sir," the villager stammered, stepping closer, seemingly drawn by Poirot's intensity. "I came across the letter by chance, lying in the rain. I thought it might be important." He handed it to Poirot with shaking fingers. As Poirot accepted it, he noticed a similarity in the ink, an unmistakable resemblance to Lord Balthazar's penmanship. A sudden hypothesis ignited in his mind. "But is it truly unsigned?" he murmured as he perused the carefully penned lines. "Perhaps there is more to this than mere chance. What is hidden between the lines speaks volumes." The others leaned in, intrigue tugging at their apprehensions. The urgency in Poirot's tone heightened their collective unease. "This letter speaks not just of a will, my friends, but of aspirations and intentions, long buried under layers of deception." Just then, Lady Isolde uttered a soft gasp. "The photograph!" she exclaimed, eyes wide. "Margaret had shown it to me, an image she discovered tucked within old papers. She insisted it contained something irrefutably important." "Then we must find this photograph," Poirot declared, his voice steady yet commanding, before matters spiraled toward an irrevocable decision. The gathering darkened, shadows lengthening with the dying light, hopes entwined with moments of despair. "Where is Margaret now?" Poirot pressed, his motive sharp yet revealing kindness. A shuffle of feet. "I have seen her near the old gazebo," Tremaine stammered, taking a step back, as the others turned to scrutinize him. "Frequently, during dark nights, she spoke alone. Yes, but I never thought—" "An eavesdropper, are you?" Poirot raised an eyebrow, but not unkindly. "Tell me, did you hear anything?" "No, nothing significant." Tremaine's voice raised slightly as his composure frayed. "Just ghosts of voices lost among the wind. Poirot cut him off. "And yet a ghost now haunts us all. Margaret has become our spirit, the spectre of truth we dare not confront. I must find her." As he pushed through the door, a flash of lightning severed the charged air around them. Both Tremaine and Cressida hung back, hesitant to follow him into the storm. "Do not tarry, we have no time," Poirot urged. "Mistakes shall bring peril, and the night is pregnant with darkness." Racing into the rain, Poirot fought against the shrieking winds toward the gazebo, the scent of damp earth filling his lungs. He could feel the electricity in the air, an omen of revelation. The distant rumble of thunder punctuated his resolve. Not merely a storm they listened to, but a flood of unspoken truths. The gazebo stood disheveled in its weather-beaten splendor, shadows melding amidst heavy thickets. Poirot halted before it, scanning the clearing for any sign of Margaret's presence. And then, against the lavish backdrop of foliage, he spotted an object lying at the base of an ancient tree. A glimmer of gold flickered in the gloom. He approached, heart pounding, as lightning flashed again, the world jolting to clarity. As he crouched down, the object revealed itself to be a locket, its clasp free of mud, an indication of someone recent in their care. Poirot's fingers trembled slightly as he gingerly opened it, the rain soaking the fabric of his suit. Inside, a curled photograph, a pair of smiling faces, locking eyes with each other, one face turning familiar. The other was of a stranger, perhaps a key witness to all that had ensued. A profound sensation washed over Poirot. With it came the understanding that this photograph held layers of the unfolding enigma. His heart raced with the revelation, the shadow of betrayal rising as dark figures deepened behind him, drowning the sanctuary offered by the storm. Behind him, the shocked murmurs of other guests emerged like phantoms. "Poirot, what have you found?" trembled Cressida's voice, brushed with anxiety. He turned slowly, grasping the locket. "Ah, mes amis, our veil of deception is about to be ripped asunder," he announced dramatically, his eyes blazing with clarity. "But beware, for it is not the darkness we should fear this night, but what lies beneath the shadows." As murmurs arose in dread-filled tones, Poirot realized the truths entwined within the locket, and with them Margaret's fate, lay heavier than he could have ever predicted. The game was about to evolve, cascading deeper into the heart of treachery, and with it, they would plunge into a fray with consequences unforeseen. Time was running thin, and he needed to gather the storm before it engulfed them all. Chapter 7. The Puzzle in the Portrait. The heavy storm continued to lash Windermere Manor, each drop of rain resonating like a drum in the shadows that enveloped the grand estate. As Poirot stood by the gazebo, the glimmer of the locket still warm in his palm, a sudden clap of thunder sent a shiver through him, not of cold, but of anticipation. The open locket revealed a photograph, but it was a mere whisper compared to what he knew lay awaiting discovery within the ancestral halls. The truth, tangled in decades of deception, would not be revealed by outward appearances alone. One must delve deeper into the very fabric of this family's history, hidden within portrait frames and echoes of laughter long past. With a sharp inhalation that cut through the storm's wrath, Poirot turned towards the manor, each determined step purposeful, as he fought the wind's biting insistence to deter him. He had to examine the portraits lining the drawing-room walls, the gazes of ancestors staring back as if they held the keys to unraveling the mysteries surrounding Margaret and the inheritance that loomed, ghost-like, over them all. Inside, the air felt heavier, saturated with secrets and tense anticipation. The other guests assembled, casting wary glances about. Cressida was still pale, while Tremaine, now transformed into a mere shadow of charm, hovered near Lady Isolde like a moth drawn into danger. Poirot's eyes scanned the room, settling finally upon the ornate portraits that decorated the walls, each family member trapped in a moment forever. "Mes amis," Poirot called, summoning their reluctant attention. "I believe we shall discover our next clue within these very frames." Rounding them, he gestured to the portraits. Each tells a tale that has lingered in whispered echoes, revealing family dynamics concealed behind serene smiles. Observe closely, for what is painted may hold truths that will illuminate our current shroud of darkness. Cressida stepped closer, eyes flitting from one painting to another, curiosity igniting the remnants of her anxiety. But what could possibly reveal anything about Margaret's fate? Poirot halted before a particularly grand portrait, that of Lord Balthazar himself, a stern countenance, with eyes that seemed to follow his every movement. This is our starting point. Lord Balthazar was a man driven by ambition. His words hung in the air, rising with each breath as he elaborated. Do you not see how his posture conveys authority, but bears the weight of latent treachery? The legacy of this family is imbued with longing for wealth, wealth that has motivated both splendid and nefarious actions through time. Lady Isolde interjected, her voice quivering. He had promised me my inheritance before, her voice faltered, the accidents began. Accidents, indeed, Poirot mused, his mind racing as he analyzed the shadows gathered within the painting's depths. These accidents may not perhaps be so accidental after all. You spoke to me of your late husband's will, did you not? Yes, she replied, glancing towards Cressida, her gaze laden with implications that left questions dangling in the air like cobwebs. It was incomplete. Some spoke of writing an amendment, a last-minute change. It could have been lost to anyone, but it was highly important. Or highly coveted, Poirot interjected, the excitement of deduction coursing through him. Such tension was the fertile ground in which greed took root, and he suspected the need for wealth would drive a family to become rather predatory. And what of Margaret? Cressida added quietly, shifting slightly. Surely, she must have known too much. Indeed, Poirot replied, returning his gaze to the ominous portrait before them. What she knew may have forced her into a seminal role, a role that threatened those who wished to escape the grasp of old obligations. As the impact of his words settled, Poirot noticed the discomfort weaving through the group. Tension hummed between them, a mechanical pulse of distrust shaking the air. And yet, he murmured, his voice almost a whisper, the true nature of this mystery is cloaked in intricacies. Let us delve deeper. He pressed closer to the portrait, studying every detail with focused intensity. Then, he spotted something. Beneath the heavy gilded frame, a small, barely noticeable inscription hidden in the intricate woodwork, a date, nearly obscured by dust. Ah, he exclaimed, pointing it out. Look here, mes amis, May 15, 1928, a date that does not align so conveniently with the family's quieter history. Why is it important? Tremaine asked cautiously, half hidden behind Lady Isolde, who lingered with deliberate apprehension. Poirot turned, his expression a mixture of fervor and restraint. Because it suggests something was happening. A burial of a family secret, a hidden financial back and forth, or possibly a murder. The word lingered ominously, and a palpable silence fell. The portrait holds more than mere likenesses. It encompasses a family struggle for power, for wealth. Lord Balthazar's reign, with his ambitious temperament, may have invoked jealousy within his kin. The question is, who stood to gain the most? Poirot waved his hands as though drawing lines in the air. Lady Isolde and Margaret, two women intertwined in the struggle for property, perhaps? Lady Isolde's eyes darkened, revealing an undertone of something far more complex than mere grief. I never wanted to be heir to a cursed legacy. Perhaps they were looking at the portrait for much too long. Those who gaze at it first forget family ties and see the wealth it represents. Poirot's voice softened. It is time we overcome our fears and discuss the connections we each hold toward the will. Just then, a sharp knock echoed through the manor, a momentum that raced like an electric current. The guests froze, exchanging glances filled with dread. Poirot's instinct flared, a certainty hitting him with fervor. Stay, behind me, he ordered as he moved toward the door, resolute and poised. What will you do? Tremaine hissed, his voice barely more than a breath. But Poirot was already unbolting the door, the sense of potential chaos hanging thickly in the air. As the door swung open, the howling wind from outside continued its assault, but something shifted. Shadows lingered longer than they ought, dark forms existing in the periphery of the dim light. The tension in the room was now a living entity, palpable and alive, as Poirot swiftly opened the door to whatever awaited him. Outside, soaked in rain and holding the cold breeze in his hand, stood a figure silhouetted against the stormy backdrop. "I have something to tell you about the will," came the voice, familiar yet foreign, laced with hesitance and urgency. Poirot's heart raced as he recognized the visitor. Could this revelation perhaps unveil the darker threads weaving through their lingering shadows? The clarity he sought was there, just within reach, but like the portraits adorning the walls, they could prove dangerously treacherous. But we must unravel this mystery soon, he thought hungrily, realizing that fortune and folly often walked hand in hand, and stepping forth into the embrace of ambition and truth was his only path forward. In this moment of confrontation, Poirot grasped tightly at the locket in his hand, his mind aflame with conclusions that sprawled too wide and interconnected even for him to fathom alone. He would need them all, the secrets woven into the family tapestry, the motives buried, and the wealth behind lost faces. This puzzle was but a portrait, waiting to be completed, one threaded with clues, lies, and unforeseen twists. On the cusp of revelation, Poirot prepared himself for a storm that promised to unleash more than the dusky rain cascading from the skies. Chapter 8. A Whisper from the Dead. The tempest raged on outside Windermere Manor, rain pelting the ancient stones with a furious intensity, as though nature itself sought to drown the secrets that had lingered far too long. In the dim glow of the drawing room, shadows danced in harmony with the flickering candlelight, creating a tapestry of human anxieties, fears, and whispers unspoken. Poirot's sharp eyes pierced through the heavy air, surveying the unease that hung as thickly as the storm clouds above. The locket, still clasped in his palm, felt like a ticking clock, each moment drawing them closer to an explosive revelation. As he turned from the open doorway, moving further into the suffocating silence, a thought tugged insistently at his mind. History had a peculiar way of revealing itself in fragments, sometimes whispered from the past, echoing softly in forgotten corners. A journal, perhaps, he murmured to himself. The desire to search for tangible clues fluttered intensely, a need that would not be ignored. Stepping with purpose, Poirot crossed the room toward a door left ajar, leading to the manor's library. This space, layered with dust and cobwebs, was often shunned by both guests and family alike, a sanctuary for memories and inadvertently concealed truths. Each footfall sounded like thunder in the quiet, but Poirot paid little heed, his mind consumed with the task at hand. The library's air was cool and thick with the scent of yellowed pages and leather-bound spines, a fitting mausoleum for the secrets contained within. Poirot scanned the shelves, each tome a vessel for the lives that had flourished and faded within the walls of Windermere Manor. There, near the back, hidden behind a row of encyclopedic volumes, was a narrow alcove, a well of darkness, swallowed by the ebb and flow of history. With deft hands, he cleared the surrounding dust, revealing a small, aged journal, its leather cover cracked but intact. A sense of foreboding washed over him as he lifted it from its resting place. This was not merely a book, but a vessel that held whispers from the dead. He could feel the weight of it in his hands, as if it was brimming with breathless confessions waiting to spill into the light. Just as he began to flip through the pages, a sharp knock jarred the atmosphere, sending a jolt of apprehension through his frame. Startled, he looked up to see Cressida standing at the threshold, her features edged with concern. "Monsieur Poirot, what have you found in the library? You must come back. It is not safe." Poirot's gaze flickered between the journal and her troubled expression. Cressida, my dear, this journal may very well hold answers to all that haunts us, answers that may unravel the very fabric of the Windermere family. The intensity of his voice held her momentarily captive, but he could see the trepidation settle in her brow. "Please, you do not understand," she whispered, her voice quivering like the light from the candles. "There are things within these walls that must remain hidden. The more you uncover, the deeper the danger will grow." Her warning fell, like an unrelenting storm, on Poirot's ears. "But is not the truth the very essence of our quest? We cannot cower from what lies buried." He gently pressed open to a page, marked by a delicate ribbon, words spinning tales of sorrow and entanglement, a family hungering for legacy, riddled with betrayal. In that moment, the storm outside seemed to pause, as if the universe itself inhaled, holding its breath in anticipation. As Poirot read, the visage of events long past came alive, accounts of familial strife, disputed inheritances, and whispers of a tragedy draped in the haze of time. But then, just as a crucial detail emerged, a new sound intruded. The door creaked open, revealing Tremaine, haunted and pale. "I insist you surrender that journal," he demanded, a flare of desperation igniting his usually charming demeanor. Poirot felt the atmosphere thicken further, tension coiling neatly into the air as Cressida moved closer to Poirot's side, her face betraying both fear and curiosity. "Why would you desire this book so desperately?" Poirot asked, eyeing Tremaine with suspicion. "It holds secrets that could unravel everything. You cannot wish to bury the past any longer." With a sharp intake of breath, Tremaine stepped forward, his eyes darting to the pages where Poirot's anxious fingers lingered. "Because you do not understand the weight of what you hold," he insisted, voice straining. "Those who seek the truth often find themselves trapped in webs of their own making." "Then it is the truth we seek," Poirot replied, unfazed by Tremaine's mounting urgency. "What have you to hide, my friend?" Cressida clutched the side of the ornate bookshelf as though it were an anchor. "Let us not forge further into this abyss, Poirot. Your pursuit of the truth may cost us dearly." For a heartbeat, Poirot considered her plea, weighing the consequences. Then he felt the sudden, fierce presence of guilt refracting through Tremaine's voice. There lay something more beneath the surface, something personal that connected him to the legacy echoing through those very pages. Just then, as if responding to the tension, the lights flickered ominously, casting long shadows that danced cruelly across the walls, and a rumble of thunder cascaded through the air. The journal slipped from Poirot's fingers, landing with a soft thud that echoed heartbreakingly, its pages flapping open to a carefully penned name, Lord Balthazar. Tremaine's eyes widened, terror seeping into the very marrow of his being. "You do not know what the revelation of this name entails," he warned, but Poirot held firmly to his conviction. "On the contrary, dear friend, it is the legacy of Lord Balthazar that may illuminate the darkness cast by the secrets you wish to guard." Poirot stepped forward, claiming his role as a light in the shadows. "Now, speak, for time runs thin, and I sense our illusions are unraveling." Outside, the storm raged, and within the drawing room, the past pressed in on them with a ferocity that demanded to be addressed. In that critical instant, one singular thought struck Poirot. Every family harbored secrets, every inheritance bore the weight of desire, and every soul within this manor was uncomfortably connected to the ghosts that lingered just beyond the veil of history. As the weight of his realizations settled in, he realized that the next revelation might not merely be a page turned, but the very fabric of their future at stake. The whispers of the dead, captured in the journal, would become an echo they could no longer ignore. With that thought, the very heart of the mystery tightened its grip, and Poirot knew that they stood on the precipice of an explosion, a storm far more perilous than the one lashing the manor from outside. It was a storm of revelation, deceit, and the unrelenting thirst for legacy that would soon consume them all. Now, we delve deeper, Poirot murmured, heartened by the danger that would forge the paths to the revelations they so desperately required. Chapter 9. The Final Trap. The rain beat relentlessly against the windows of Windermere Manor, a ceaseless percussion echoing the turbulent emotions that swirled within. The wind howled as if roused by the intensity of the atmosphere inside. A storm was brewing, but it paled in comparison to the tempest that was about to unfold within the drawing room. Hercule Poirot stood, arms crossed, surveying the assembled cast. A curious mix of anxieties etched upon their faces as he prepared to guide them into what he had devised as a game, a clever pretext to air their grievances and, in turn, unveil the hidden truths that lay cloaked in shadow. I invite you all, friends and foes alike, to partake in a venture of revelations, Poirot announced, his voice smooth, yet laced with an intensity that drew their attention like moths to a flame. A flicker of concern rippled through the group, eyes darting between one another, apprehension palpable in the air. Let us embrace a game of questions and confessions, where truths may emerge from the depths, much like the sun through the storm clouds above. The guests exchanged glances. Tremaine's face was grey, and Cressida's features were pinched with anxiety. Yet something sparked amongst them, a yearning for resolution, for comprehension of the tapestry woven through generations of deceit. The tension was electric, and Poirot could almost taste it. You see, my friends, it is in the heat of the moment that emotions reveal themselves most rawly. A question here, a revelation there, and soon we may discover who we can truly trust. Hesitation hung briefly in the air, but it was Balcom, the matriarch of the family, who finally spoke, her voice trembling slightly. What do you propose, Poirot? Will we not simply uncover what is best left buried? Ah, but it is precisely what is buried that cries out for light, he replied, his eyes sparkling with determination. We shall begin with a simple question. Each of you will take turns, posing a question to another guest. It may be personal, pointed, or even benign. The rule is, however, honesty is paramount. Cressida stepped back, a hand to her throat. Monsieur Poirot, we are not particularly accustomed to such intimate exchanges. What if we unearth something best left unturned? Then we deal with it, he replied, steely resolve in his gaze. Now, shall we begin? As if compelled by the air of challenge, Emmeline, the youngest of the assembled, broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. I will ask Tremaine. Tell us, have you ever felt overwhelmed by the legacy that awaits you? The air stiffened momentarily, and Poirot observed Tremaine's face drain of color. It's a burden, he said carefully, his tone tinged with frustration, but one I have learned to carry. What choice do I have? Do you not aspire to transcend it, to craft your own identity separate from the shadows of your forefathers? Emmeline pressed. Tremaine's lips tightened, and, defiantly, he retorted, It is easy to criticize from an unburdened perch. Ah, but it is not merely criticism, Cressida chimed in, her voice growing stronger. We are all haunted by expectations and ghosts from the past. Are we not entitled to seek our truths? The dialogue crackled with an intensity that refracted in waves across the room. One question prompted another until the air thickened with accusations, half-truths, and burgeoning confessions. Each guest transformed through each layer of inquiry, shedding palliatives like shed skin, revealing fears, motivations, and desires that transcended the surface intrigues of family legacy. Poirot moved like a conductor, orchestrating a symphony of confrontation, noticing subtle shifts. The way Tremaine's fingers clenched the armrest, how Cressida's eyes glimmered with unshed tears at the mention of family strife. An unassailable tension seemed to spiral toward a breaking point. "What of Lord Balthazar, I wonder?" Poirot interjected, his gaze fixed firmly on Tremaine. "What can you tell us of his legacy? It seems so many threads converge upon him." The reaction was instantaneous. A veritable tempest of emotions erupted within the group. Tremaine's face blanched, while Balcom's defiance flickered but did not crumble. "He was a man of ambition," Tremaine shouted, his voice cutting through the room like a knife. "But the truth is, we are but victims of his choices, victims of a will that binds us more closely than blood." Caught in the momentum of his confessions, Tremaine momentarily relaxed, and in that instant, Cressida stepped closer to him, a mixture of support and vulnerability dancing in her gaze. "But does it not also free us, Tremaine? If we confront the past, we may reclaim our futures, absolve ourselves of his sins." The room hung on her words, and Poirot seized the opportunity. "Ah, absolution. A powerful term indeed, but it must be earned, yes? Tell me, Tremaine, what sins would you wish to absolve?" Defensiveness soured his features. "You would have us drag our family's name through mud, Poirot. What do you gain from this?" "Knowledge, my dear fellow. Clarity for each of us entwined in this web," Poirot replied gently. "Revelations carried on winds of honesty must sometimes blow through difficult passages." At that moment, in the tempest outside, a sudden clap of thunder echoed against the stone walls, as if in concordance with the upheaval inside. A hand shot up abruptly. It was Emmeline, again, her eyes locking onto the drawn faces of every guest. Lord Balthazar spoke of connections, secrets to hidden wealth, paths tied inexplicably to the will. What if his legacy touches us all more intimately than we dare to admit? Each guest fell silent, a collective intake of breath, caught in the existence of their latest realization. Poirot's mind flared with possibilities. He sensed a construct unfolding, a connection, one of lineage crossing and entwined shadows, dancing dangerously close. And there, a letter perhaps, a missing correspondence that could bind all of you to Lord Balthazar's machinations. The revelation seemed to electrify the room even more than the storms outside. Not only had they uncovered embers of dispute, but they had begun to smolder into flames of suspicion, anger, and perhaps betrayal. "Do you believe we ought to find this letter?" Tremaine's voice had taken on a fervor that hinted he was beginning to see something far darker than he had anticipated. "Yes," Poirot asserted, a rush of determination flooding through him. "We must. But the real question remains. Who has the strongest connection to Lord Balthazar, and who among us stands poised to gain the most should we uncover the truths that lie beneath?" All eyes turned toward Tremaine, flickering with the fear of a discovery ripe with potential, enough to trap them in their own designs. Outside, lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the stark faces drawn in realization. As the tension coiled, Poirot knew the storm was only beginning, and with the promise of buried secrets breaking free from the soil of their discord, he prepared himself for the final unmasking, knowing that trust had grown thin and the final trap had yet to be set. The next act of this intricate play would unveil more than he had anticipated. It would threaten to collapse the fragile connections holding the group together. "Now we must proceed with caution, mes amis," Poirot warned, his demeanor solemn. For the storm outside rages with an assurance that the storm within is far from over. Chapter 10. The Truth Buried in the Garden. The storm outside had escalated to a fever pitch, wind shrieking through the cracks of Windermere Manor and rain lashing against the windows in a relentless assault of nature's fury. As Hercule Poirot gathered his thoughts amidst the chiming of the grandfather clock, an unsettling thought danced in his mind. There were secrets buried not just in the records of the late Lord Balthazar, but perhaps even in the very soil beneath their feet. The shadows of betrayal loomed large, and Poirot was determined to shine light on what the storm concealed. "Mes amis," he called out, his voice resolute, drawing everyone's attention. "The revelations we seek may lie hidden beyond these walls, in the very grounds of the manor. I believe it is time we conduct a search that leads us to the garden, where perhaps truths have been left to wither among the flowers." Tremaine frowned, uncertainty etching deep lines into his handsome features. "In this tempest, it hardly seems prudent." Poirot's eyes sparkled with conviction. "But it is precisely the tumult outside that may propel further revelations. The garden may yield unexpected treasures, buried memories, entwined with the roots of deception." Swallowing his reservations, Tremaine nodded. The collective energy in the room, an amalgamation of fear, hope, and suspicion, pushed him forward as he summoned the strength to follow Poirot. As they stepped outside, the rain-soaked earth squelched beneath their shoes, and the scent of wet foliage enveloped them, fading only slightly beneath the cacophony of thunder. The garden, usually a tableau of serenity, bore witness to their turmoil. Fog crept low, rolling like hesitant spirits, shrouding the once vibrant flora in a melancholic gloom. "Over there!" Poirot exclaimed, his voice cutting through the storm as he pointed towards a patch of dying petals flanking an old stone bench. There, half hidden beneath a wild tangle of ivy and damp leaves, was an object that glimmered ominously in the muted light of dusk. With dexterous hands, Poirot pried the object free and lifted it to eye level. "A locket," he announced, scrutinizing it closely. But not just any locket. The insignia engraved upon its surface shimmered with significance, the very seal of the Balthazar lineage. Questions ricocheted through the air, vibrating with urgency. "Whose locket is it, Poirot?" Cressida asked, her voice barely rising above the rainfall, yet laden with curiosity. Before Poirot could respond, Emmeline stepped forward, her face pale, eyes wide. "I recognize that. It belonged to my mother. She wore it before the accident." The lingering anguish in her words was palpable, a wound yet unhealed. "An accident, you say?" Poirot's brow furrowed as he scrutinized Emmeline. "Or perhaps a tragic consequence of the darker forces long at play." She hesitated, her body language hinting at a truth locked within her. There were whispers, stories of the family's past, of Lord Balthazar's dealings, secrets no one dared to unearth. "Indeed," Poirot replied, his mind racing as he pieced the puzzle together. "A connection, a thread woven by fate. The locket may represent not mere memory, but revelation. and within it there could be something more, a document, a clue. But before Poirot could delve deeper, the rhythmic tapping of rain began to drown out their words. In urgency, he turned his attention back to the garden, scanning the earth for any more signs of entrapment. "Look here," a voice rang out, and he turned to see Balcom, the matriarch, kneeling beside a cluster of tulips, soil-muddied fingers digging urgently into the ground. Poirot approached with curiosity, kneeling beside her. She gasped, her hand trembling as she unearthed a wooden box, drenched but intact. The monogram upon it was familiar, etched into the wood, the unmistakable initials of Lord Balthazar. The trembling tension of the moment settled thickly in the air around them. With a swift move, Poirot took the box from her hands, carefully prying it open as water dripped from their overhanging hoods. Inside, they discovered rotting papers and brittle, yellowing envelopes. "These hold the weight of history," he declared solemnly. As he examined the correspondence, a particular letter caught his eye. A brief note written in an elegant script that hinted at arrangements involving family estates, hidden artifacts, and unclaimed legacies that ran with the bloodline intertwined with a foreboding warning to trust no one. "This," Poirot murmured, holding it aloft for everyone to see, "could form the basis of an insidious game. Lord Balthazar knew of his empire's cracks, the potential for betrayal among his own. He penned this with a foreknowledge of greed and envy within his family." Poirot's heart raced at the implications. But alas, it does more than that. It invites us to question motive. Who among us stands to gain the most from these hidden treasures? "I do not want any part of it," Tremaine shouted, stepping back, his voice steeped in the fervor of denial, defensive panic lighting his eyes. "You think I would betray my own? We are all bound by blood." But Poirot's gaze remained fixed, a piercing analysis, assessing not only the scorn of Tremaine's words, but probing deeper than any accusation. "The truth, dear Tremaine, may be more layered than we expect. Perhaps you were bound by loyalty once, but loyalty can fray, and the darkness festers." As the storm intensified around them, a dim light flickered back in the manor, a single candle illuminating the interior like a beacon amongst shadows. In that instant, Poirot felt an urgent certainty dawning upon him. The secrets buried beneath the garden entwined with the very essence of the family's existence. Each guest had a role, a potential connection to this hidden past, and a motive layered under the guise of familial bonds. "Emmeline, Cressida, Balcom," Poirot began, his voice steady, "we must unravel these threads. We are not isolated characters in a story, but actors entwined in a web of inheritance and desire. In this garden lies not just a legacy of memory, but of potential wrongdoing." Before anyone could respond, an unexpected crash of thunder nearly drowned out his words, but Poirot, sharp as he was, pressed on, his voice rising above the storm. "What is hidden in these letters can illuminate the truth buried deep within you all. The revelations await us, yes, but the journey must begin now." Suddenly, through the noise of crashing rain and howling winds, a chilling wail echoed from the manor, rippling through the sodden earth, the sound like a ghost demanding justice from beyond the grave. The air was thick with apprehension as they turned toward the manor, realizing that the echoes of the past were not only buried in the garden, but had now encroached upon their reality. Poirot's heart thudded fiercely against his chest, every fiber of his being aware. They were far from done, and the next revelation loomed just ahead. "Mon Dieu," he breathed, summoning his courage as the wind shrieked again. The games are only just beginning. Chapter 11. The Hidden Confession. As the storm raged on, a sharp crack of thunder split the night, causing the very air inside Windermere Manor to tremble. The candlelight flickered wildly, casting dancing shadows that seemed to waver between the realms of reality and memory. In that moment of turmoil, the tension brewing within the hearts of the guests reached its boiling point. Poirot could feel it, an electric charge in the air, ripe for confession, ready to unravel secrets buried like the locket they had discovered in the garden. "Mes amis," he called out, surveying the assembly with a pointed gaze. "The storm outside, it stirs not only the elements, but also the emotions within us." His keen eyes fell upon the guests, gauging their reactions as they huddled together, enveloped in a cloud of anxiety. "We are but players in a grand tragedy, each burdened by the weight of our ties to Lord Balthazar." Tremaine stood by the door, drenched. Yet it was the look on his face, a mixture of guilt and fear, that caught Poirot's keen attention. The others whispered among themselves, each word drowned out by the thunderclaps that surged like turbulent waves. Yet, before Poirot could decipher their quiet exchanges, a soft whimper sliced through the chaos. They all turned to Emmeline, who had drawn herself away from the group, her face pale, and shadows of despair etched around her eyes. "I can't," she murmured, pulling her shawl tight around her shoulders. "I can't keep this a secret any longer." The room fell eerily silent. Poirot stepped closer, his curiosity piqued. "Mon enfant," he urged gently, "it is the truth that can liberate us from this torment. You hold a key. Speak, and we shall listen." As she looked around, the faces of the other guests were a mix of sympathy and apprehension, each grappling with their role in this tacit web of deceit. With a shaky breath, Emmeline stepped forward. "It's about my mother. The locket. It belonged to her, yes, but it also ties me to Lord Balthazar in ways most scandalous." Cressida's eyes widened, a flicker of recognition igniting within her as she leaned forward. "You were always so close to him, Emmeline. There was talk of inappropriate liaisons," Tremaine interjected, bitterness lining his words. "Only gossip, surely." "Gossip that bore truths," Emmeline continued, her voice gaining strength. "My mother and Lord Balthazar had an affair. It was more than just a dalliance. They were hopelessly in love." A collective gasp echoed through the room. Poirot, maintaining his calm demeanor, watched the reactions unfold. Each guest, a player responding to the strings of an unseen puppeteer. And this love, was it requited? Was there more to it than mere passion? He inquired, teasing out the layers of her confession. Their affair was doomed. My mother's family would never have accepted him. He spoke of marrying her, but it was mere illusion. Her eyes glinted with unshed tears. When my mother fell, pregnant, she confided in me, revealing her desire to escape, to live free from the shackles of her family's expectations. But then, Emmeline's voice faltered. Then, one night, she disappeared. They said it was an accident, that she had fallen into the river. But I suspected otherwise. "Spare us the theatrics," Tremaine snapped. "So, your mother's life ended tragically. That does not imply murder." "The truth can often reside in shades of grey," Poirot interjected, his eyes narrowing. He could sense a deeper narrative. "Emmeline, you mentioned whispers earlier. Whispers have power. They can cultivate fear, yes, but they can also protect. Who would want to ensure your mother's death was deemed an accident?" Emmeline hesitated, the realization of her own implication flooding her face. "Lord Balthazar," she whispered, nearly to herself. "Indeed," Poirot mused, allowing the name to hang heavily in the air, but not for the reasons one might think. His love, if genuine, would have compelled him to protect her, to shield her. Why then would he allow such catastrophe to unfold? Each guest wore a mask of thoughtfulness, mixed with apprehension. Cressida frowned. "But what of the locket? Why would your mother have kept such a precious artifact?" Emmeline lowered her gaze, the weight of her emotions evident. She wore it as a promise, a reminder of love, lost yet cherished. "But there's more." She suddenly found her voice, gaining courage again. Before she disappeared, she spoke of a letter she wrote to Lord Balthazar to sever all ties, one that would allege his involvement in her life's undoing. The implications crashed over the guests, like the pouring rain outside. Poirot could all but feel the threads of manipulation tight around them. A letter that could serve as a weapon against him. Perhaps he did not harm her in love, but sought to silence her forever, he concluded, piecing together the threads of emotional turmoil, ambition, and desperation. Could he truly have acted like that? Cressida struggled with the possibility. Did he have something to lose? Family estates and hidden inheritances, the wealth he coveted, such things can cloud a man's judgment. Poirot's expression shifted from inquiry to certainty. "It's not merely love that binds us, mes amis, but also greed. But this creates a paradox, a puppet master who controls both strings and shadows, struggles to maintain power when fear walks among them." Outside, the rain seemed to intensify, mirroring the turmoil inside. But even as the truth began to take shape in their minds, another crash of thunder echoed, this time followed by a soft squeal of agony, as if the manor itself had lamented the chilling confession. "What was that?" Balcom gasped, her eyes wide. Poirot spun toward the hallway that led deeper into the manor. "The echoes of the past demand to be heard. We must investigate." Hastening toward the source of the sound, Poirot motioned for the others to follow. But just before they reached the expansive corridor, a chilling realization struck him. A fleeting thought danced through his mind. The locket's insignia might not just be a symbol of love, rather, it could contain something more sinister, a confession left in ink and blood. "Mon Dieu," he whispered, "what further secrets await within Lord Balthazar's world? We are not yet done." As they stepped forward, the lights flickered ominously, and Poirot's heart raced. The manor held its breath, poised to reveal its final, devastating clue, a confession hidden for too long, and the players had only uncovered the tip of a dark iceberg lurking beneath the surface of familial treachery. Just as they reached the door leading to the library, Poirot halted and spun on his heel, locking eyes with Emmeline. "But tell me," he implored, "what if Lord Balthazar's love was merely a mask he wore? Who, then, was the true master of betrayal?" Emmeline's gaze faltered, leaving Poirot with the relentless question of whether the greatest puppet master was buried beneath their skin, and the answer awaited just beyond that door, the next chilling chapter in their dark investigation. The air sparked with unearthed energy, and Poirot braced himself for whatever truth lay ahead. Chapter 12. The Truth That Lies Beneath. As the night deepened, the howling wind outside Windermere Manor transformed into a wretched lament, mingling with the echo of a chilling scream that had just reverberated through the halls. Poirot, now in the library's half-lit interior, felt the weight of the moment hanging palpably in the air. The silence that stretched between them was suffocating, a taut string waiting to snap. As he positioned himself strategically, advancing his thoughts sharper than ever, his mind raced to untangle the knot of emotions unraveling in the room. "Gather around, mes amis," he commanded, his voice unwavering despite the chaos surrounding them. "For we stand upon the precipice of clarity, in need of the truth that lies beneath this tangled web of affections and resentments." The guests, silhouetted against the dim candlelight, moved closer, their expressions a mix of fear and apprehension. Emmeline remained drawn into herself, her previous revelation stilling her as if she were a ghost, haunting the very space where her mother's shadows lingered. Let us not forget that every story has its protagonists, antagonists, and the silent hands that shape the narrative from the shadows, Poirot asserted, allowing his gaze to linger on each individual, reading their faces like the pages of a book. It was Tremaine, with his habitual frown plastered across his features, who registered the most intricate shifts, trembling with the burden of unspoken secrets. "Detective," Tremaine began, his voice stuttering under the weight of concern, "you're suggesting that one of us led to that tragedy. Surely there are limits to what one might be accused of." "Ah, but is there not a thin line between desire and desperation?" Poirot interjected sharply, his eyes narrowing into calculating slits. "For you see, it is not just a question of love or loss. It is about preservation, of secrets or legacies." He pointedly glided his gaze over Cressida, whose body language screamed tension, her fingers nervously twining around the fabric of her dress. "Emmeline has shown us the delicate balance between grief and betrayal. But we must delve further. To find the truth, we must examine not just what was lost, but what might have been gained," Poirot proclaimed, his theatrical flourish betraying his urgency. As whispered doubts still hung unspent in the air, the tempest outside slashed against the windows like the haunting clutches of a forgotten soul. "Consider this. What if your mother's disappearance," he paused to let the implications simmer, "was not merely an accident? What if she had made a choice, one that threatened the very foundations of Lord Balthazar's legacy?" "Are you implying that she left willingly?" Cressida questioned, her tone both incredulous and incredulous. "That seems rather implausible." "Does it? But did she truly have the choice?" Poirot turned suddenly to Emmeline, now holding her gaze more intently. "If she sought to sever ties with Lord Balthazar, would that infuriate him? Or perhaps," he continued, whispering dangerously low, "provoked a hidden adversary even more volatile?" A crack of thunder punctuated the pause, flooding the room as shadows surged menacingly. Tremaine broke the tension, stepping forward. "You want us to believe that whoever killed her, the one hiding in plain sight among us, was pushed by emotion, perhaps revenge? It seems low," he scoffed. "Ah, but we underestimate the power of anger," Poirot rebuked, flicking his finger dismissively. "Beneath the shield of civility, everyone hides a facet of their nature, fearful as the tides they ride upon." His mind raced, recalling their earlier discussions, the snippets of history and passion that dripped from one confession to another. And who among us would be most fearful of exposure? He paused, allowing his eyes to sweep from face to timid face, resting deliberately on Balcom, whose discomfort was palpable. Could it be those protective of their own precarious positions? Balcom's breath quickened, and she involuntarily stepped back, her hands raising defensively. "I know nothing. I've been loyal to Lord Balthazar." "To all of you," she exclaimed, her voice quaking. "Loyalty is a curious thing, is it not?" Poirot replied, leaning forward, keenly attuned to her tremors. Yet, what about ambition? The pursuit of inheritance, a chance to rise in a world that reduced you to but a maid. All desire is a perilous balancing. Act Poirot, stop! Emmeline suddenly interjected with fervour, her voice breaking. There's no need to accuse anyone. This tension, it will only lead to more pain. Ah, but the pain can yield truth, mon enfant, he persisted softly, holding her gaze steady. There is a story hidden even in your locket, is there not? A clue that could illuminate a deeper motive. Remember, it is of utmost importance to examine the significance of those lost words. The room quieted momentarily, the flickering candlelight emphasizing the crestfallen expressions around the table. Perhaps we should revisit the locket, Cressida proposed gingerly, narrowing her eyes in contemplation. Were there any letters within it? Anything that would connect us more with your mother's fate? A message that could debunk or confirm any pretense? Emmeline's fingers touched her neck subconsciously, her breath hitching. I didn't keep what was inside, but I found an envelope. I never opened it, only watched it vanish. In the ashes. Her voice trembled, a mixture of intrigue and fear coursing through her. Of course, Poirot's excitement surged as he felt the strands of the tale intertwining. Her valuables, her last keepsakes, a desperate letter, possibly discarded in haste. We must access her belongings, for they hold the final thread of truth we need. But before anyone could respond, the door leading to the corridor creaked eerily, revealing the entrance of a figure half obscured in shadows. The group turned, breaths suspended in their throats. Poirot felt an unmistakable shift in the atmosphere. I believe, a low voice carried, resonating dreadfully, that you are all rather too close to discovering things that ought to remain buried. As the figure stepped into the faint light, the truth twisted ominously before them, revealing a haunting familiarity. Poirot stood rooted to the spot, his mind racing through the implications falling into place like consecrated cards, a master of manipulation. Revealing his hand. Mon Dieu, he whispered instinctively as the revelation unfolded, the pieces of the puzzle now coiling tightly around them. Justice may yet be served, but the price for truth was a perilous dance on the edge of betrayal. How delightful that you all congregate here, the stranger purred, the shadows wrapping around him like the whispers of secrets long hushed. Let the truth ignite your curiosity and expose your darkest fears. Caught in the flickering dance of light and shadow, they braced themselves as the storm raged on outside, the true nature of their relationships about to be unearthed as they teetered on the brink of revelation. And in that moment, an unseen clock began ticking, echoing the desperate thump of their hearts. As Poirot prepared to unravel the final threads, leaving them acutely aware. In his world, hope, like the storm, could hide unimaginable darkness.